I received a fantastic message, a fantastic question on Instagram yesterday. Somebody asking me, what do you think distinguishes the qualities of a GOAT? Somebody in a sport who is the greatest of all time. Now, there are not many people who have this prestigious title, but this is definitely something that warrants me sitting down. I already did this, thinking on this whole subject and then delivering to you guys what I think the qualities are that somebody needs or you would need if you want to become the greatest of all time in your chosen sport. So guys, intro first and then we'll dive right into this episode. Let's start off and list a couple people who are the greatest of all time in their sport. And there's going to be a little debate around this. It's not going to be a perfect system because I might go, okay, Giorgio Petrosian, greatest of all time in kickboxing. You might go, no. It's somebody like Peter Arts or Buakaw or Badr Hari or Rico Verhoeven. But regardless of who it is, all these guys who are right on the brink of being the greatest of all time in kickboxing, they all have very similar qualities. When we look at boxing, for me, it's none other than Floyd Mayweather. I don't think there's too much of an argument there. You can argue, I suppose, some people that he, picked certain opponents, but he's the only guy who's undefeated. He's the only guy that demolished Pacquiao, that picked him apart. He went through so many other people. To me, he's the guy there. In MMA, we could be looking at Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, Khabib, John Jones. There's quite the list there of potential all-time greats. When we look at surfing, we got guys like Kelly Slater, hockey, guys like Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan in basketball, Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps. There are many people who are on just this next level from all the other competition. So what is it that really sets them apart? And I did a little bit of soul searching, and regardless of what many of my subscribers say to me, and you guys are being very kind, Gabriel Varga, kickboxing GOAT. No, I'm not the GOAT. I've already established that in a previous episode. I've worked very hard to collect the belts behind me, and I'm very proud of everything I've accomplished, but I have not reached that GOAT level. I'm not saying I'm done. I mean, well, now that I've moved to karate combat, maybe I could go and try and become one of the martial arts GOATs. Somebody who was successful in kickboxing, super successful, somebody who is super successful in karate. There's still that hope for me. But in terms of kickboxing, no, I'm not one of those people. Even with 6 pro world titles to my name, I'm not in that conversation. But I can still sit down and go, okay, what do these other guys have? These qualities. A couple of them I'm missing, and I can be honest about that. But these are important things for you guys to lock in, not only in your search to become one of the best in the world, but also these are just going to help you in any upcoming fights you have, whether it's a provincial or state title or a country title, or you start going for world titles. All the qualities we're going to list today are essential for anybody wanting to be successful in many avenues of life. So let's move in to the first quality I deem super important to become a GOAT, and that is obsessive. I'm truly believing, have to be obsessive about whatever you are doing. If you decide you want to do kickboxing, for example, if a couple decades ago I went, you know what, I want it to be a hobby, I'm going to go in twice a week, I'm not really going to think about it when I'm outside of training, I don't think you're going to have a chance of being successful. Compared to somebody who goes in 2 times a day, and then in between is thinking on it. Like, I even have times where I'm in the middle of a dream and I'm thinking about kickboxing, or I fall asleep and very quickly I start throwing little punches and then I wake up. I'm not saying I have to live, breathe, eat, like everything's about this sport, but it's borderline right there. And I'm going to call that obsessive about the sport. When you are obsessive about something, you're going to become that much better than everybody else who is not obsessive about it. The next quality is you have to be consistent. You can be somebody who has all the skills in the world, but when you start training, taking a break. It's just not going to work for you. It needs to be something, like we said, you're obsessive about it, not just part of the time, but all the time. It is your life. And when you are consistent with something, you will start seeing those improvements grow that much more rapidly. Next up is self-confidence or believing in yourself. When we see guys, the people in the world who just seem so darn good, like when we saw McGregor in the heyday of his career and we're going, holy smokes, this guy's untouchable. the belief, the confidence that he had was astounding. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather, and I truly believe anybody else, even if they're more humble about it, somebody like Kelly Slater or Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky, maybe they don't display their confidence the same way that these fighters do, but I believe they have it. And it is something that I have not always had to the extent that these guys might. And it's not that I constantly doubt myself, but I do have certain doubt that creeps in and questions sometimes like, ooh, am I good enough to become a Glory World Champion? And then I go and I compete and I go, yeah, I won. But I didn't go in going, nothing can stop me. I'll never lose. I'm so darn good. And maybe that is something you need. So we want to find the borderline between arrogant and lots of self-confidence. If you can find that middle point where you're not quite as bad as some of those guys who are flaunting it, I think a lot of that is for show, but maybe that's what we need to become a GOAT. Next, you have to absolutely be able to overcome adversity. It does not matter if we're talking in competition or in training or in life, but if you stumble every time there's a roadblock, if you cannot overcome some adversity, at some point it is going to break you down and you're not going to be able to go any further. And even in my career, I've had losses and they hurt, but I don't go, oh, okay, I'm just going to give up. We see guys like Petrosian, who has a terrible knockout, receives a terrible knockout. That was back about 6 years ago. He recovered, he went on a 6-year winning streak, about 6 years, until most recently where he got knocked out again, but I don't doubt that he will bounce back and go on another crazy winning streak if he really wants to. Somebody like Floyd Mayweather, you might go, well, Gabe, he's never lost, he's never had adversity. Well, when he fought Shane Mosley in the second round, he got clipped with a big overhand and he almost went down. For Mayweather, that is adversity. That is the closest he's come to being really, really damaged. He bounced back, he recovered, he overcame that adversity, and it is something that all the greats definitely have. Next up, motivation. You need to have so much motivation. That is something I've always had. I've always been super motivated to go out and train and to test myself. And I think these other guys who are just going to that extra next level, their motivation does not just stop where mine kind of does, where I go, I want to test myself, I want to see what I can do. These guys are motivated to reach the pinnacle, to go as far as they possibly can, and probably even beyond what anybody else has ever done. That is a primary motivation of these people. If you have that, congratulations. I don't have that to that extent. The next quality we definitely need is composure under stress. There is so much stress when you're competing in any sport. But when you start reaching that top level, the stress just goes even more and more and more. And I have personally noted this, and I've managed to keep it under control for the most part. But now imagine that the whole world is watching and everybody is expecting you to perform at the highest level because they all recognize you to be a GOAT. You have to have so much composure and that ability to deal with everything that's coming at you. Stress is just going to twofold, threefold, fourfold when you can deal with it and sort of fluff it off the shoulder. That is something that is going to make you amazing. Now, something else we have seen, and I've actually heard Wayne Gretzky talk about before, is being able to have your brain almost step ahead, play out possible scenarios before they're happening. And it's just basically maybe the brain is working slightly different. So somebody like Kelly Slater, surfer, if you guys don't know who he is, people always talk about him being in the right spot at the right time, picking up the perfect waves. Maybe that's because his brain is working in such a way that he's able to read the waves. Maybe it's something else. Maybe when we see somebody like Petrosian, he hits, he angles. He hits, he angles. Maybe it's like a chess match and he is in advance already anticipating what the dangers are and putting himself in a place to avoid that. That is not something that I'm fantastic at, and I don't think it's something that many people are amazing at. Otherwise, everybody would be on that next level. But if you have that ability, think a step ahead of everybody else. As Wayne Gretzky said, he would be passing the puck, or he would be looking at what other people are doing and thinking steps ahead about what might happen, and he put himself in a goal-scoring position or pass to somebody who might be in a goal-scoring position. I've heard him say that before, and it's just something that if you can figure it out, I don't have any tips on how to do it, but if you can figure that out, that is something that sets you forward to becoming a GOAT. Next up, I see all these GOATs setting super challenging goals for themselves. This is similar to motivation that we talked about, but it's not just I'm motivated, it's that I'm going to set an actual goal that seems out of this world and then I'll go and accomplish that goal with all the other attributes it takes to become a GOAT. So for instance, when we heard somebody like Conor McGregor, before he was even UFC champion, already saying he was going to be a 2-division UFC champion, most people just went, oh my gosh, well, this guy, he's just ridiculous. And then he went and did it. And those goals that he had, even though they seemed massive, to him, they probably didn't seem impossible. The average person in the public goes, no, impossible, never going to happen. And these guys see it as a reality. Set yourself big goals. They can't only be big goals because you need small goals to work your way up to those massive ones. But if you just stop short, you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I want to win my next fight. Nothing after that. I'm not even going to think beyond it. Well, I think that's a little bit of a mistake if you want to have long-term goals of being super great at whatever you're doing. And the final tip that I have for you today, there are probably many other qualities that these GOATs have, but the final one that I could think of was being in control. So what do I mean by that? Well, in terms of fighting, or in terms of other sports, it is the ability to control your opponents, to make sure you are not falling behind them. And we see Floyd Mayweather, we see guys like GSP and Khabib and Petrosian constantly being in control from the get-go of the fight. They might not dominate by hurting the person, but they're constantly controlling the ring, they're constantly collecting data, and it's very rare to see them lose even a minute of any round. The control they have over their opponent as soon as they step in, and it might be physical and it might be so much mental as well. There might be more mental part playing into it than we actually understand at this point, but control is going to be paramount when you step in competition against somebody. If you step in and you let that other person take over control for a moment, you have to fight to get it back. So being able to control things for the majority of a bout, a competition, whatever it may be, is a definite must if you want to be somebody who's going to be considered the greatest of all time. And guys, that's my list right there. I'm not expecting everybody out there to become the greatest of all time. Obviously, that is only reserved for a few select people in each sport. But like I said, some of these qualities, you can start taking them, start trying to add them in and make yourself better and make yourself become, as we already mentioned, champion of your country, champion of the world, moving forward, always improving. If you enjoyed this episode, guys, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel and get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.